Now in the previous video, we went over the basics of track lanes and comping. In this video, we're going to go through it a bit deeper, showing you more advanced features. But as a review, I have a project in front of me here, and I want to record a guitar solo. I have a guitar track set up with the input, and let's record our first pass. Now by default, if we record a second pass, it's going to create takes, which you can see if we go to the options menu, new recording that overlaps existing media items, it's going to create new takes by default. But now in REAPER 7, we could add lanes right here. Or we could just do it by changing the track to a fixed lane track. Just right click it, go down here to fixed item lanes, and that changes our track to a fixed item track, meaning we can record multiple lanes in this track. So now let's record another pass. So now we have two passes of a guitar solo. We can switch between them right here, 1 and 2. Let's record a third. Now we have 3 passes and 3 lanes. Let's take our track out of record. We can hear them back one at a time. And pick which performance we prefer. Let's say we liked the third one. We could right click it, go to delete lanes, and delete all the lanes that are not playing. Now we just have our keeper lane, and we could turn off this fixed lane track right here. Now we just have that one performance. But obviously, that's not very flexible, as we can't go back or save those old takes with this method. Instead, if we still preferred this third pass, we can just right click over here and show and play only one lane. Now we just see this one lane. Although we can still switch our lanes right here, 2 and 3, and accidentally choose the wrong one. To be more careful, we can go up here and right click and disable fixed lanes from here. Or, let's put it back, we can just right click and turn off fixed item lanes, which will do the same thing. Now we're back to a regular track, but we didn't delete the other lanes. We just hid them. We can right click, go back to fixed item lanes, or do it over here, re-enable fixed lanes. Now we have those lanes again, which we could choose from here very easily. But this is still not the most flexible way to choose the best performances. We might want to choose them based on each phrase. So for that, we could do comping. We could right click, go to comping, and choose comp into new empty lane, which creates a new lane up here, which we can comp into. And notice around here, around the button, it's a brownish gold, letting us know comping is turned on. We can double click the button to turn comping off, and now we choose our lanes like this. But if we double click it again, comping is back on, and now we can choose it based on phrases, known as swipe comping. Notice how the cursor changes to a comping tool. Now we can just choose comping areas like this, and choose them phrase by phrase. So I can choose this phrase, or this phrase, and we can hear them in context. And we're seeing it up here, the result of what we chose down here. And we could choose different comps just by selecting them right here, or using the T key. type T to go to lane 2 or 3 or back to 1, or hit Shift T to go backwards. Back to 3, 2, and 1. So you use a keyboard shortcut based on where our mouse or cursor is, put it here, and just switch lanes that easily, or click on them this way. But let's delete this comp lane by right-clicking, go to delete lanes, delete lane. Now we lost our comp, and I'm going to show you a shortcut. Instead of creating a new empty lane, we can create one that's automatically creating comp areas, so that based on the size of the items we recorded in our lanes. So if we choose this, it starts with lane 1 chosen based on the size of the item we recorded. So we don't have to create that comp area like this. It's already created. But we could still create new ones like this. But notice, we have to do it in the lanes that aren't chosen. If we choose over here and drag, it moves that comp area, which is useful for certain things. If you want to change the comp area based on both sides, but personally, I find it easier just to drag it from this side or this side to adjust those comp areas. Create a new one over here, readjust it over here, and it adjusts the size of the comp area instead of doing it over here. So if you prefer that, like I do, we can change the mouse modifier to always create new comp areas when we drag either here or here. So let's go to our preferences, Control P on the PC, Command comma on the Mac, and scroll down to editing behavior and mouse modifiers. Make sure we're in the context, fixed lane comp area, and left drag. By default, it's going to move our comp areas, but we could change it to add comp areas or create them instead. And notice all the other options that are available with modifiers, along with a bunch that aren't being used. So if you still prefer that old behavior, we could put them over here, although I rarely use it. So now, if I drag even in an already created comp area, it's going to create a new one. And if I want to heal it, Alt Control on the PC, Option Command on the Mac, just click here to heal the comp areas, so it doesn't look as messy. But now, I could just create some like this, and then comp through them, hearing this in context. When we're done comping, we can double click this button, and we're no longer in comping mode. Hitting T doesn't change the comping areas, and clicking here doesn't change them either, as now we can edit our items like a typical Reaper track. But if we want to go back to comping, just double click this again, and we can re-choose our areas. Or we can collapse this by right-clicking, Show Play Only Lane. Now we just see our comp lane, taking up less screen real estate. But we can still comp from here. As we can see, we're still seeing the goldish brown, letting us know comping is on. We can double click to turn comping off, but we can still choose lanes from here. Go down to lane 1, 2, and 3, or to our comp, or go up the other direction, even though comping is off. And we could also comp down over here. Notice these arrows letting us know which lane we chose. We can go to 3, back to 1, and so on. Notice it only chooses from our lane choices. Then we could double click to turn off comping, and we just see our comp, and we don't see those arrows. Although, like I said before, we could still accidentally choose different lanes from here. If you don't want to do that, right click up here and either hide that button so it doesn't show up over here. Hitting T doesn't change our lanes, but my preferred way is to right click it and disable fixed lanes completely. And now we don't see those lanes, and we can't accidentally recomp them or choose the wrong lane. Although we could right click to go back, to see our lanes again and recomp them if we want. Or we could always right click the track, turn fixed item lanes off, and now they're off again. Again, we can't choose different takes. The arrows don't show up down here, but we can right click at any point and re-enable them here. Or just turn on fixed item lanes again. Then we could choose our lanes or double click to recomp. Now we could also create multiple comps. So we could right click again, go to comping, comp into new empty lane, and create a whole new comp up here. But again, let's do it the other way. Undo, comp into new empty lane, automatically creating comp areas, which are based on these areas we already chose. So now we could try this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And we're just going to hear those choices. Which could be different from this comp. So we can compare different comps and choose our favorite. And also, while comping comp 2, we can still choose pieces from comp 1. Or choose them directly from the source lanes. And we can create as many comps as we want. Now, if we want to record later in the song, let's go over here. By default, Reaper's going to start on lane 1 instead of on the comp lanes, assuming we still want to use these lanes for recording. Usually, you don't want to record into your comp lane. You want to comp into it later. So we could start on lane 1 and just punch in when we get past this point. And notice, Reaper put that on lane 1, because I punched in after this point. If I punched in before, it would create a new lane. And if I record again, it's going to start on lane 2. And the same if we record again. Now we can comp these pieces. Just double click in the lane we want to comp into, make sure we create some comp areas, we can choose them, we can create smaller comp areas, and choose that way. And again, we can create multiple comps, go up here, and try different options. And choose between them later. Comp 1 and comp 2. Now if we decide we want to re-record in one of our lanes, let's say we're not happy with lane 2, instead of recording a whole new lane, we could record right into this lane. Just right click, go to recording, and instead of using record into first available lane, we could record into this lane. See the red dot that shows up right here, letting us know we're going to record over this piece. Although by default, Reaper's going to create takes. So now we have takes within a lane, which you could use if you want, but most likely we want to record over this lane. So instead, we can go to Options, New Recording that overlaps existing media items, and change it to Trim Existing Items or Tape Mode. So now, if we record in this section, it's going to replace that phrase. We do the same for lane 3. Go to recording, record into this lane, and re-record this lane. And turn it off when we're done. So now it's going to record into the next available empty lane. And we can recomp using these pieces, just like this, hitting the T key, and recomp either comp we want. Now we could also reorder our lanes. Just drag over here, put lane 1 down here, or up here, put the comp down here, move lane 1 back, and change the order of our lanes. Or we could rename our lanes. Just double click, and give each lane a new name, rename our comp, to remember which ones we prefer. We could also add or delete lanes manually. So I could right click, insert empty lane above this lane, let's do another, or insert them at the bottom, right here, or delete them by right clicking, delete lane, or even easier, using a keyboard shortcut. Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, just double click to delete a lane. We could delete lanes we're using easily as well. Undo that. And finally, Reaper assumes we want to use these lanes for comping, meaning we're only going to hear one lane at a time, which makes sense, but we could also use them for layering, which I'll show you more in depth in a different video. But for now, just know that we could play multiple lanes just by hitting Control on the PC, Command on the Mac, to select or deselect a lane. Now we're not hearing anything. Choose lane 1, 2, and 3. Now we'll hear all 3 lanes at the same time. So by default, we're going to hear one lane at a time, but we could also choose multiple lanes or no lanes if we want. But by default, just clicking each one is only going to choose to hear that lane. And again, when we're done and we choose the comp we want, just right click and disable fixed lanes, or just right click the track and turn off fixed item lanes over here. And it collapses it all to just seeing one lane that we can't comp. With the T key, we don't see the arrows down here, and we're just seeing one track. And if we want to recomp at any point, right click, re-enable fixed item lanes, or just turn on fixed item lanes over here. Now we can recomp by double clicking over here and choosing different choices. When we're done, just disable it again. And we're back to just one lane that we can't accidentally recomp or choose the wrong lanes. There's a few preferences for fixed lanes I want to show you. If we open up our preferences, Control P on the PC, Command comma on the Mac, we could scroll down to our track send defaults, and right over here, we could change it so when we create new tracks, there'll already be fixed item lanes. And we could also change some preferences over here. We could start with small lanes, big lanes, or hide the lane buttons, which you could see if we turn it back on. Right now we're seeing small lanes. We could right click and change it to big lanes, or back to small lanes, or hide the fixed lane buttons. But we could change that or start off that way by default, just by changing them right here to small lanes, big lanes, or hide the lane buttons, or a few other options you might want to also check out. But also, if we go down to Appearance and Track Control Panel, there's an option over here worth looking at. By default, when we hit this button up here, it's going to switch between big and small lanes. So instead of right-clicking it and switching it here, we just click it, it goes to big lanes, click it again, it goes back to small lanes. Or we can hit the Shift key and click it, and that changes it to just view one lane. Shift click it again to go back, but we could change that behavior to the opposite. If we switch this to one or many lanes, now we can click this button and it goes to only view one lane. Click it again to see our many lanes, like this. Click it, it goes back to one lane view. Or we could shift click it to switch to large lanes, shift click it again to go back to small lanes. So we can get either behavior by clicking it or hitting the Shift key, but we could choose our preference or what happens without the Shift key by switching it right here. It defaults to big and small lanes, but we could change it to one and many lanes, which is my personal preference. So you can just click this once, it goes to one lane view, click it again, it goes back to multi-lane view. Or shift click it to go to large or small lane view. So that's pretty much it. That's track lanes advanced in Reaper. Hope you learned something, hope you could use it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bingo, boys, let's go.